So I just open up my site utpselenium.com, and out here today we will be talking about the Testng framework. Okay, and right, I'll make a new Java project. Okay, day6_testng. Right, now what is Testng? It's basically a framework. What do you mean by a framework? Hold on, I'll just tell you. If you are having a project, right, that project is having various Selenium test cases inside it. Fine, and you have got that project will have some Excel files. Fine, then when you do the testing, you need to actually generate some, you can say, reports. You need to do some logging. Fine. Now, where is Selenium? Selenium actually comes out here. Okay, out here Selenium comes into the picture. So what we have is we have a centralized controller, okay, which is just like a Junit framework or a Testng. Sometimes people use Cucumber, then they use Fitness as well. Right. So these frameworks, they actually do nothing but they help you read from Excel, do the reporting, do the logging, call the test cases in a particular order, maintain the flow of execution. Right. So this is like a centralized controller. So that's what we are going to study. We're going to study Testng now. Fine. And in Testng, we will first thing is that you need to install Testng in Eclipse. It gets installed as a plugin inside Eclipse. So what you will do is you will go to Google and type Testng Eclipse. Okay, and go here, and basically you have to go to this link, and I am assuming that everybody is having Eclipse 3.4 and above, right? Copy this link. I'll also give you the link over WebEx and also over Skype. Fine. All you need to do is that you need to go to Eclipse, help, install new software, click on this option and paste the URL here, hit enter. You get Testng, select that, click on next, your Eclipse will restart in the end. Fine. So all you need to do is you need to go to help, install new software and paste the URL and click on next. It will be installed as a plugin in Eclipse. To check whether it's successfully installed or not, you can go to Windows, Show View, Other, and expand Java over here. You will get the option Testng. Right? So you have Testng installed. Now how do we use it? Fine. To use Testng, this is my source folder. Okay, I'm going to make a new package called test cases. What is a package? Package is a folder inside a folder. Okay, Now inside this I'll make a new class, and suppose I name this class as say I'm testing any banking website. Okay, so I'll make this class as transfer. So this test is going to transfer the money. It's going to transfer the money from one account to another. So what I'll do is I write over here @test. This is known as an annotation. Annotations start with @sign. There is no main function in Testng, right? And I make a function called public void transfer money. Okay, this is my function. @test symbolizes that this function is a test case. Okay, now you move your mouse over the test function over here and select the option add Testng library. Sorry. Okay, guys, I won't be so clear today. My throat is not so good. Okay, now add the Testng library. You select this and you can import test. Now when you add the Testng library, you will see the Testng coming up over here as a library along with Java library. So it's got nothing but one Java file, testng.java. Okay, now this test function, it actually symbolizes that this is a test case, and inside this you can write system.out.println transfer money test. Okay, and right click on it and run it as a Testng test. When you run this as a Testng test, in the end you will get a output like this: transfer money. Okay, this is a default output. It tells you that the transfer money test is over and this test is successful. This green symbolizes green sign out there. It symbolizes that the transfer money test is over successfully. Okay, now if you refresh your project, you will get a test output folder. If you expand this, you will get index.html file. This is your report. Automatically, Testng also generates reports. So if you look at this, you will see that this is there was one test which was executed. Fine, this is the information about it, and transfer money was passing. Green means it is passing. Fine. So yeah, that's what you can install Testng and just write this code @test, and you run this test as a Testng test, and automatically your reports will be generated in the test output folder. Fine, in this folder you will get the HTML reports by default. Every time you run this, the old Testng folder would be lost, a new one will be generated, and the reports will be there. Okay, now as you have installed Testng as an add-on in Eclipse, you will see this particular section coming up. This one. If you click on this, this is just a diagrammatic representation of what you get. You just executed one test called as transfer money. Fine. Now, moving ahead, you can have multiple test functions in a Java file. Okay, now how do we fail a test and all? We'll look at it in some time, but let's concentrate on this thing. For example, I have another test called say check statement. Oops. Fine, and I have another test called public while do login. Fine, so this symbolizes that this single Java file has got 3 test cases. And I write over here logging in, and out here I'll write checking statement. Fine. Now when I run this file transfer test.java, if I run it as a test-ng test, you will see that output is a little different. Now I expected, because the @test for do login was the first test in this file, right? So I was expecting that logging in should be printed first, but it is printed at the second position. The first test executed is the check statement test, which I never wanted, right? And the third one is transfer money. So there is no order out here. Okay, the tests will not be executed in the order you specify them in the file. Fine, if you look at this output over here, we'll see that check statement got executed first, then do login, and then transfer money. Fine, now I want do login to be executed first, and then say check statement, and then transfer money, whatever it is. Fine. So I want the order to be like this: first do login, then transfer money, and then check statement. So I can write over here, this test depends on methods, and I can give the name of this function do login. That means this test will only be executed if the do login test has been successfully implemented or executed. If there is a failure in the test do login, this test will not execute. We'll see that in some time. Okay, we'll see that in some time, that if the login test fails, this second test will not be executed. And similarly, check statement test will be executed when the do login and both transfer money have been executed successfully. So if I run this test now, you'll see that logging in, transfer money, and checking statement, and out here as well, these are 3 tests. Now inside these test functions, we will be keeping our Selenium code. These are open source test frameworks, Testng, Junit, and all. They are not specifically meant for Selenium. They are meant for unit testing and various other purposes as well. But you can use these tests with Selenium as well. Okay. And how do we use these frameworks with Selenium? We'll look at it in some time. First, let us learn the features of these tests. Right. Now, we have seen how to run the tests which are dependent on each other. Okay. Now, let me create one more file over here, one more class. Say I'll name that class as um, international transfer. Okay, and I will have a function called as QuickTest public void do international transfer. Fine. Now, in this uh, function, right? So maybe I need to validate something. Suppose if I run this, it will print that the function is executed successfully. No error came up, so international transfer is run successfully. But what if I have to report some error in the reports? In the results, I want to show some errors. Right? For that, we use assertions. To validate something, we use assertions in Java. Okay. Now, what are assertions? Assertions they're denoted by inbuilt class known as assert class. It's a class in Testng. Fine. If you write assert dot, you will get a lot of functions. Now, please be out here. You will also get some functions coming up from Junit because assert class is also there in Junit. Fine. Please be careful. Okay. Suppose I have got two values. One is expected value, say and one is now I want to compare both expected and actual. Generally, the actual value we will use Selenium to retrieve this, but right now I'm just putting it over here. Okay. Now suppose the expected and actual values are the titles of the page which you want to compare. Fine. So we can write in assertions assert dot. There is a function called value in it. So if I write actual and expected in this, assert is an inbuilt class. Assert equals is a static function in that class, and you are passing the actual and expected values into it. Now, if I run this international transfers.java, it will pass because both the values they match. Fine. But what if I make one of them different? For example, I write capital X in front of the actual value. And I run this code. So you will see that it gives you an error. Assertion error, expected hello there, but was this. So you will get the error. This is known as an assertion error. Fine. Okay. Now, since you have got this error, okay, what will happen is that if you look at the reports, it's not an error actually, it's exception. Hold on. If you look at the index.html out here of the HTML reports which are generated, I can refresh these ones. You will see the do international transfer out here, it is failing. And if you observe carefully, all you wrote was this particular line. So assert class has got functions which can help you to communicate with the reports. Okay, Assert class has got functions which can help you to communicate with reports. Assert or assert equals. Now there is another one. Assert dot assert true. You can give any condition over here. For example, 2 greater than 1 and a message. So you write some error message. Now assert true, what it means that this condition which you are writing should evaluate to true. If the condition evaluates to true, only then this particular assertion will pass. Okay. If it evaluates to false, then this simple assertion will fail. If you run this, it passes. Fine, everything is green, it passes. But if I write 2 greater than 11, which means that this will fail, the value should be false, so an error will be thrown, the error message will be this message. So if you run this, see that? Some error message. When can you use this kind of thing? For example, you want to check whether element is present on the page or not. So you can give a Boolean condition over here which can evaluate to true or false that whether the element is present on the page or not, and give the corresponding error message in case it is not present. Right? So assert true wants that this condition should evaluate to true. And similarly, there is another assertion known as assert dot assert false. Fine. This false, you have give the condition and the message. Right? Now, false is opposite of true. It will expect the condition to evaluate false. This assertion will fail only if the condition evaluates to true. Right? So it depends. Later on you will observe, later on you will see under which circumstances do we use assert true, under which circumstances do we use assert false. Right? Now in this, example, right, this assertion is failing obviously because 2 is not greater than 11. This will evaluate to false. The condition out here will evaluate to false. It will fail. If you run this, you will see it failing. Fine. Now if you write over here system.out.println A and system.out.println B. Fine. If you run this, you will see that A is printed. Fine. And B is not printed. A is printed, but B is not printed. This means that the line on which assertion error comes, the line on which assertion fails, the lines after those particular lines will not be executed. Okay, similar thing with assert equals. If both of them match, it's fine. But if they don't match and there is a failure in matching, there is an assertion error, then the lines after that particular line will not be executed. Right? Now, what if we have a scenario in which we are comparing two values which are not so critical in nature? That means I don't want my program to stop in case the assertion is failing. I just want that an error should be reported, but the test case should continue. It should not be that the test case should stop. Right? To handle those scenarios, we use something known as listeners. I'll talk about them in 15-20 minutes. Right? I'm just giving you an idea why they are used. right? Because the line on which assertion fails, the test it basically stops on that particular line. The whole flow will not stop, only that particular test case would stop. Right. Let's go back to our original example in which we had got 3 tests. Suppose in the first test I am giving assert equals A, comma B. If I compare A and B here, I am comparing with the help of assert equals function. Obviously this will fail. Logging in, will it be printed? No, because the control of this test will stop on this particular line. If I run this and I look at the reports, nothing is printed. And if you look at the results, login test is failing, but transfer money and check statement, they get skipped. Yellow sign signifies skipped. Why have they been skipped? Because both tests were dependent on the successful execution of the login test. Right? So if I remove these 2 lines, that is, these 2 tests are not dependent on the successful execution of the login test, what will happen? First of all, there will be a random order in which they will be executed the test. Secondly, even if the login test fails, right, the other 2 tests will be executed. If you run this, you will see that both check statement and transfer money are executed, but do login fails. Do login fails because of an assertion. But if I make the other test cases dependent on the login test, then in case login test is failing, both the other 2 test cases will be skipped. If you run this, you will see the output. This fails and these 2 are skipped. If you look at the HTML reports which are generated, if you open index.html, if you open up this file, you'll actually observe the login test having red mark, it is failing, and other 2 tests are skipping. Fine. Okay. Now, what if I have to skip the test case myself? For example, I'll make a test call. Suppose I make a class called or check account balance. Fine. Now this class suppose has a test called public void account balance test. Okay. Now many times we feel that we don't need to execute all the test cases which we have. We want to skip a particular test. What we do generally is we keep an Excel file in which we keep the information which test to run and which test to skip. So we read the data from the Excel file, right, and we then decide based on the data from the Excel file in the Java code or in the Testng code that whether to execute the test or to skip the test. If I have to skip a test, then it's quite simple. All you need to write is throw new skip exception. Skip exception is a class in Java. You just need to throw the new script exception and give any error message over here. For example, skipping the test and name of test. So if according to the external file, right, we don't need to execute this test, then we throw a skip exception in the test deliberately. If I run this test, check account balance, if I right click on this and run it as a test test, then I'll observe that this particular test will skip. Right? So we saw very basic things out here. That is the very first thing: how to install Testng, how to make simple tests in our whole project. Okay, tests which are dependent on each other. Then in international transfers, I explained about assertions, what assertions are, how they can pass or fail your program, what are the various kinds of assertion functions, assert equals, assert true, assert false, and all. Then I told you how you can deliberately skip a test case. Assertion will either mark the test case pass or fail, but to skip a test, you need to throw a skip exception. Fine. So let's move further from here.